Welcome to the Legends Behind the Craft podcast, where we feature top leaders in the wine and craft beverage industry with your host, Drew Hendricks. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, everyone. Drew Thomas Hendricks here. I'm the host of the Legends Behind the Craft podcast. On this show, I talk with leaders in the wine and craft beverage industry. Today's episode is sponsored by Barrels Ahead. At Barrels Ahead, we work with you to implement a one-of-a-kind marketing strategy, one that highlights your authenticity, tells your story, and connects you with your ideal customers. In short, we help wineries and craft beverage producers unlock their story to unleash their revenue. Go to barrelsahead.com today to learn more. Now today, Bianca Harmon, our D2C strategist, is joining us again. How's it going, Bianca?
It's going good, Drew. Excited to talk to Craig today.
Yes, today we are talking about regenerative farming with Craig Camp. Craig is the general manager of Troon Vineyards. Welcome to the show, Craig.
Great to be here. It's as we approach harvest. I know that a lot of California people are already harvesting, but we're a little ways away yet. But we're starting to think about it now. Yeah,
we're recording the show. Well, let's see, it's August 18th. We're recording the show. So you're located. So Troon Vineyards is in Applegate Valley down in Southern Oregon.
Right. So we're in extreme southwestern Oregon. So we're 25 miles from the California border and 60 miles from the Pacific Ocean here in the Siskiyou Mountains. So very, very different than Willamette Valley and Napa and Sonoma, so forth to the south of us. We're kind of a transitional area. We're cooler and dry, and wetter than Napa and Sonoma, but we're warmer and drier than the Willamette Valley. So we are more focused on Southern French varieties. We're not obviously, and the well-deserved reputation of Oregon Pinot Noir, but we don't grow any Pinot Noir. We're growing Syrah, Mourvedre, Grenache, and Marsanne, Roussanne, and so forth, because that's really what's ideal for this climate. So our valley floor here is about 1,400 feet. We're located in the Siskiyou Mountains around us, top out at about 7,000 feet, and so it's a really rugged, beautiful area.
Oh, sounds fantastic.
It really is. I was just out in that region a couple weeks ago, actually, when Grants Pass was having 112-degree weather.
Yes. Yeah. We're a little cooler than some of the areas because we're closer to the ocean. So we get the warm days, but get really cold nights. So you get a diurnal shift of 50 degrees as a normal day. So it's 100 in the afternoon, 50 by 10 o'clock. So wow. It's really dramatic. It works the heat, of course, as it gets hot here in the inland, that heat rises. And because the Rogue River cuts through the mountains and creates a channel, so that hot air rises and it just pulls that cold air in off the Pacific Ocean and cools us down. So it's an interesting growing area because we get about, obviously at this altitude as far north, our growing season is shorter than a typical California growing season. But on the longest day of the year, we're getting almost 70 minutes more sunshine than, say, Napa does. So, and I don't get any fog or anything in the morning. So I'm able to ripen because of these varieties, because of the really long days. And then at harvest, it reverses. So we're picking our reds in October, and the days get really short, and it's not uncommon to have 30-degree days in the morning. So at that point, the photosynthesis almost comes to a stop, and I can let the grapes hang and develop flavor without the sugars going up or without losing acid. So the Applegate Valley style is wines that are naturally more moderate in alcohol and high in acidity.
Very interesting. Now, as far as we're going to talk about Troon for sure, but I want to learn a little bit more about you. How did you get your start? Now, you didn't start as in the wine industry.
Well, I had a brief affair with journalism after college, and then when I was in college, I spent a semester studying, air quotes, in Europe. And so we were got to France, and I said, well, I should buy some wine. So I started having wine there, and came back to the United States feeling incredibly sophisticated, and went to the store to buy a bottle of wine, and realized I didn't know how to buy a bottle of wine here. And so it was up to start reading books, and I just went down there, and it just pulled me into it. And in a few years, a friend of mine and I started an import company and distributorship in Chicago. This is in late 79, called Direct Import Wine Company. And so we were really the first to start bringing in small domain wines. So we were importing Becky Wasserman's Burgundies and Neil Italian wines. And then we did the same thing on the West Coast. Sold that after 20 years and went into the production side, which I've been doing now for also over 20 years. So I've been doing it in a long time and kind of touched base through the industry from sales to production. So
now, as far as production, I really want to jump to the topic is regenerative farming and biodynamics. That in Troon, that you guys employ it, and you've got some incredible videos on the site. What is it about regenerative farming that really holds kind of the future of, I think, the wine industry for sustainability?
Well, I think like most people, when I first heard about biodynamics, I was just skeptical, to say the least.
Carrying a skull in the vineyard. We all hear stories like only harvest on a certain moon.
Right. Right. But you keep tasting wines and say, boy, that's a great bottle of wine. You turn around and after enough repetitions of that, you realize that there's something here, and you start to dig into it. And the process for me was really discovering what a viewpoint I have towards biodynamics, which I call practical biodynamics. So there is a spiritual side to the way some people practice biodynamics. We don't really follow that side of the Steiner spiritual side too much. What we feel is that there's significant amounts that we just don't know about how plants work and how soil systems work, and that biodynamics is in essence this proactive probiotic program. So we're doing all these fermentations. The famous one, of course, is 500, because everybody likes to see the pictures of the cow horns. It makes, good pictures makes for good coverage. And but what you're doing is taking fresh raw manure and you bury that in the horns over the winter. And what you end up with after 6 months is this beautiful, it looks like the most beautiful potting soil you've ever seen in your life. It's gone through this transition. So does it need the power of the universe to funnel down through the horn to do that? I don't think so. I think nature's microbiology is quite adequate to make this transition. The thing is the horns seem to work as far as a vessel. But so we're always experimenting with other things and looking for better solutions. But now with all these fermentation,
is the 500 your term, or is that a standard biodynamic term?
That's a standard biodynamic term. So you have the various biodynamic preparations, the minority of which are actually applied in the vineyard, and the rest are mostly applied on the compost piles. But these are all fermentations. The 500, all you're doing is collecting that microbiology that's in your soil and then making teas out of it and then spraying that onto the vineyard floor. So you're adding it to the dirt. You're not spraying it on the plants. So what you're doing is trying to feed the microbes that are in the ground, because we're trying to build natural systems. So we want the soil to work as it evolved to work, the life in the soil to work as that evolved to work, and plant evolve, work the way it evolved to work. We're humans. We're very arrogant. Like I say, we think we know more about growing grapes than grapevines. And our job is not to tell the grapevine what to do, but to help it do what it naturally has evolved to do. And if you do that, you'll end up with healthier fruit. It's like anything else, though. You can't do it anywhere. Biodynamic agriculture and regenerative agriculture, you have to grow a plant in an area that it naturally wants to grow. If you force a plant into an unnatural area, you're going to be forced to use chemicals to protect it from pests, and to add fertilizers, because that terroir, that area, is not set to grow that plant. So what we're trying to do is simply put things where they want to be, and that's really the process.
And then revitalize the soil. Now, was Troon Vineyards always biodynamically farmed, or is this something that?
No, I got here in 2016 and started to make the transition. Before coming here, I'd been in Willamette Valley for a long time, and then in Napa Valley for a long time. And then when I was in Willamette Valley, I had been buying fruit down here, some Rhône Rangers, and I was really, transfixed by the area. It was natural beauty, but also the interesting growing area, the ability to grow wines that have kind of that natural old world balance with a high acid and a lower alcohol. That's something we can do here naturally. So I wanted to go someplace where the plants wanted to make that kind of wine. So I moved instead of moving the plants.
Okay. And what sort of change did you see when you switched over to this regenerative agriculture?
Well, Troon's an historic site. It was planted by Dick Troon. That's where the name comes from, in 1972. And he was a real pioneer, pretty traditional old farmer. Not that he had this great love of wine, but he was looking for a crop that would make him more money than what he was growing, I think. So and then there was another owners in between, and it had been conventionally farmed and for all this period. And the soil conditions it was real high compaction, really a lot of disease in the vines, and it's such a beautiful site. If you look at it, you see that it's got this beautiful southwestern roll. It's got this wonderful soil types, but by the type of farming, it had compacted these soils, and taken the life out of the soil itself, and allowed disease to get into the vines. So I wanted a structure to be able to bring this vineyard back, and I felt that biodynamics would provide that framework, because again, the idea of bringing life back into a site, which is the concept of biodynamics. Really, you're looking at your farm as a complete organism on its own. So you want this biodiverse farm. So we have our farm is 100 acres, and we have 50 acres of vines, and then we have 5 acres of apple trees, cider apple trees, and we have over 40 different clones of French cider apples in 5 acres. Wow. We have a 2-acre vegetable garden, which we call a garden. I suppose 2 acres is a little big for a garden, but and then 6 acres of hay that we grow for our livestock. We have sheep and chickens and dogs, and then the volunteers like the coyotes and cougars come by too. But so the whole thing is that creating that biodiversity. So you have all these natural predators and beneficial insects and things like that to balance your system. And that's what we're trying to do, is create harmony all the time. And I think that's the strength of biodynamics. But then a couple of years ago, the Regenerative Organic Alliance created the Regenerative Organic certification, which we're very proud to be the second winery in the world to achieve. Our friends at Tablas Creek.
I was going to ask about that.
We're first. We're very similar wineries. Actually, they're bigger than we are, but we grow the same varieties. We farm the same way, so we have a lot of interaction.
Tablas is one of my favorite wineries.
Yeah, they're great. What they're really doing. And I originally met Jason Haas through the Rhône Rangers, and then we've made this connection over the years. And we're kind of like, we're very much mirror images of each other. We have the same philosophies, even the same approach to biodynamics, where we practice a practical form of biodynamics. But biodynamics, it's like organic agriculture tells you what you can't do. Can't do this, can't do that. And then biodynamics is the structure that creates these proactive fermented probiotic treatments and develops the whole farm concept and biodiversity. And regenerative, it builds on top of that, because in regenerative certification, you have to do all of those things. Plus, you actually have to show that you're making things better. It's not just sustain things. You actually have to go in and have the soil samples done and show that we are increasing carbon sequestration and building organic matter and actually making things better, not just this. We can't be sustainable anymore. We actually have to improve and make things better.
Yes. So getting that certification, how is that done?
Well, you call up the Regenerative Organic Alliance and apply.
But what do you have to prove in order to get this?
Well, first of all, you have to be certified organic to even apply. That's
I was going to ask that. So you can't do it. I mean, it takes about 3 years to become certified organic. So you can't even do you could just be practicing all of this, but until that organic tag hits, you can't even apply for it.
Right. So, I mean, since we converted from conventional, we had to go through that 3-year period for both Demeter Biodynamic and organic certified. And then at that end of that point, it was actually about the time they started with this new certification. So we were already certified biodynamic and organic by the time they came out with it. And on the agriculture side of things, we were already basically touching all the bases of the way to farm. The next step was to go beyond and take these soil samples every year and show how we're actually improving things. But on top of that, they add animal welfare a program, so we have to be certified for animal welfare. We have sheep and chickens here, but we don't raise them for meat. They're actually their job is to eat, process, and deposit the results of their work in the vineyard. And then the social welfare platform, which actually you have to go in and show that you're treating everyone in your organization properly, that they work in a safe environment, both psychologically and physically, and protection from sexual harassment, providing health insurance, fair wages, and good working conditions. So there's those 3 pillars: the agriculture, the animals, and the social fairness that you have to go through. So it's a pretty substantial investment in time. And so we were able to qualify for the silver level in the first year on the tablets. And now this year we're completing our gold level requirements.
Well, that's fantastic. Now, when you came on board, was the ownership or were they directing this, or was this something that you came in and said, you guys?
I came on first, and then as I actually came on, and I was looking to come back to Oregon, and the current owners wanted to sell, and they had a lot of things that had to be taken care of, and I'd done that in the past at another winery, and so they kind of recruited me, and I thought it'd be a good idea to come back. Oregon, I probably thought I would end up back in Willamette Valley, but then I fell in love with this vineyard. But and then so we put things together. We started this process, and then we found Dr. Brian and Denise White from Texas, who purchased the property and have fully engaged and invested in this whole process.
Okay, that's fantastic. That's fantastic.
And so you're running everything then, because they're sharing their time in Texas, correct? And Oregon?
Yes. Yeah.
So that's great. Ownership would have had the buy-in and empowered you to do what you needed to do into these vineyards.
Yes. You have to. It's a tremendous investment up front. In the long run, I think you actually lower your costs. But in the beginning, you have to make investments in equipment and people, and that's expensive. So agriculture in general is not famed for its quick return on investment.
Sure. To a winery like looking to get into it, there's the human investment, but what sort of equipment is necessary to get into a process like what you're setting up?
Basically, so in our case, the most expensive parts have been in the vineyard. Since we moved to no-till, so there's no tilling under the vine or in the vine, so we maintain moisture in the ground and don't disrupt the microbiology that's in the ground. So you have to buy special mowers and then undervine tilling equipment to establish that crop. And that's a 3-year process and alone. So, you know, you wouldn't believe how much money we spent on seeds to replant this. We have over 20 different plants that go into our cover crop, looking towards building nutrition in the long term. And then we invested in no-till seeder so that we can actually add plants to this crop. You know, crop rotation is pretty hard to do with grapevines. So the cover crop is our crop rotation. So we are developing our soil nutrition through the cover crop.
Now, is the cover crop used for the different fermentations for the compost pile, or is that a separate?
No, we grow those separately. We have an area of native plants, and then these various plants that we're growing for the biodynamic preparations. You know, like valerian. The dandelions are volunteers. We don't need to farm the dandelions. We just go out and pick them. But so we grow that, stinging nettle, things like that. So the idea is to not bring things from off the farm. You want to minimize off farm inputs. So we want to generate everything we can right on the farm itself.
So the person that may not be as familiar, and I wasn't until a few minutes ago, walk us through the different fermentations, and you got chamomile, valerian, yarrow, and what do those actually do?
So each of those so let's start with the field preparations. You have the 500, which we talked about, which is the cow manure. It was in the horn, and that's applied to the ground. Then there's a ground quartz, 501, and that is actually applied to the plant to aid in photosynthesis, and it also helps it protect it from pests. So that's basically it. Those are multiple applications that we do. And then the rest of these, the chamomile, the valerian, the stinging nettle, the dandelion, all of these go through fermentation, but then they are applied to the compost itself to aid the compost in its development. And compost is really the foundation of everything that we do. We're very fortunate to have a large organic dairy as a next door neighbor. So I can pick up the phone and call Sharon, and I have tons and tons of manure that's just started arriving. That's very, very great. And it's right here with our microbiology. It's literally next door. So, and they've been organic since 2004. So it's a great fortune for us, and a few extra dollars for them, and so it works out. But we buy 400 tons of manure a year from them. And that goes through a year-long process. Now there's organic compost.
To get rid of it. It seems like they should be giving you it.
Well, everybody wants manure now.
I guess so.
We live out here in the country. There are people that want manure, especially organic manure. You just can't get it everywhere and everything. So where we're at here, we're going through the manure. So we get that 400 tons, and that goes through a year-long process of fermenting. Now, the organic compost is a much hotter fermentation. You get the piles really hot because they're trying to kill off the microbiology. We, as a biodynamic producer, do it much cooler because we actually want to increase the microbiology in the soil. So USDA doesn't consider what we make as finished compost. So we add that, but we don't add it on until after we pick the grapes anyway. But so the preparations are added to that, and they each help that manure make that transformation again. So you start with raw manure, and a year later you get what looks again like potting soil, and then we apply 2 tons an acre to the entire property every year.
Oh, wow.
And everybody thinks it's for fertilization. I mean, certainly has some aspects of fertilization, but the primary reason, again, is we are adding microbiology to the soil and feeding the microbiology that lives in the soil now. Which the cover crop, you asked about the cover crops. So the cover crops just become green manure. So we mow them back. They mow back in and they decompose into the ground.
Oh, very interesting.
Is the upkeep in the process of this to continue this going every year? I mean, is it a lot of work? I mean, are you happy?
Yes. Yes, it's a lot of work.
That's what I would feel like it.
It's a lot of work, but we feel the results are worth the investment. We feel we have a better fruit, which of course makes better wines.
Yeah, let's talk about the wines.
That's the fundamental aspect. And also, it's as a biodynamic winery, we are minimalist in the cellar. There's very little we can do. So when the grapes come in, we ferment the grapes. That's it. There's no sulfur added, anything.
So the process is all done out in the vineyard. It's the whole process is all basically out in the vineyard, out in the farms.
Yes, the idea is to come in with beautifully healthy fruit, which we're in an ideal place because the pressures are low here because the humidity is so low in the summer and the warmer days. So that it's not a good climate for powdery mildew, which is the biggest problem for every grape grower. But we're able then to have these very healthy grapes come in and then just ferment those. So they're going into small fermenters, and the fermentation just starts and finishes on its own. The same for malolactic fermentation. All of our wines go through malolactic. We don't use any new wood at all. In fact, we're changing over from wood to concrete as fast as we can afford it.
Wow.
So we're looking to have a neutral expression through the winery and let the vineyard and the grapes make the statement. So so again, it's all native yeast. Native yeast fermentations are really interesting because when you in a commercial winery, you would kill off all the yeast and add in a cultured yeast, and that very selected. So when we start a fermentation, we have dozens or hundreds of different yeasts that are actually starting the fermentation, but most of them can't survive past about 4 or 5% alcohol. Mm-hmm. So that's yeast make the alcohol to get rid of other competitors, but it's not a very not a good long-term plan for their own lives either. So they end up killing themselves off. But it's that first period where you're getting down to that 5%, when you get into 5% alcohol, where all of those yeast join, you really change the textures and aromatics and flavors in the wine. And then of course, Saccharomyces takes over and finishes the fermentation. But again, it's a wild Saccharomyces. It's unique to our area.
Yeah, so that kind of stops the fermentation at around 13-14%.
I don't get to 14% very often, but 13% range. So our wines would range like a rosé. I think last year was 11.5, and then our bigger reds like Tannat and Syrah would be about 13.5.
And that's the style I grew up in my 20s. The European style, the southern French style wines. And it was funny. I was talking to Daniel Dow, who found a native yeast within his vineyard. I guess he had the money and budget to go find the one, and he found a native yeast within his vineyard that could actually ferment higher up to the 17. That was better than that kind of super strain yeast that dominated, that smelled like cardboard. So it's kind of funny that he's
I mean, you have to have the courage of your convictions to do native yeast ferments. Mm-hmm. The interns that have never done it before, they're always like, "You're just not doing anything." Just wait a couple of days and we'll start.
So talk to us about the end result. So you've got the regenerative biodynamic farming. You let the kind of the wine be made in the field, and then natural native yeast fermentation. What is the final product? Talk to us about that.
Well, as I mentioned, we're working basically with Southern French varieties, so blends are a very important part of what we do. We're on a small geological formation called the Kubli Bench, and there's a cliff of about 30 feet that kind of surrounds this bench. That's about about 30 feet high, and it's about 5 miles long and 2 miles wide. So it's very small, but it's this ancient course of the Applegate River came through here. And so we have these very distinct soil types here. The mountains around us, they were formed out in the Pacific Ocean, and then were actually jammed up against the coast, unlike the Cascades here to the east of us, where there were volcanoes that came up. So we have this mixture of decomposed granite with sea sediment and river sediments running through the various properties. And so when we replanted, we did everything. So instead of like one block of Syrah, we put a block of Syrah in one soil, and then another soil and another soil. Same with Grenache. Okay. So we have all these distinct types. And the idea then is to take these blends of varieties, famous things like GSM, for instance, but Syrah with Viognier and things like that, and concentrate on making blends. So we have 4 blends called Kubli Bench that we really concentrate on: a red, a white, an amber, which is an orange wine, and a rosé. And the varieties can change every year because we have 19 varieties planted on 50 acres. We're working on 20 if we can find any Tiburon. So the idea is, we're all here because we want to make these very elegant, balanced wines, and we get the raw material that can do that, and then go through this process of blending to create an interesting wine that represents that vintage. So the blends would change year to year depending on how each variety does. And whenever possible, we like to do co-ferments, because we think a co-fermentation really, you have the 2 varieties in the fermenter. It really changes the chemistry of the fermenter. You get slightly different yeast coming from different blocks, and it just changes the wine totally. A co-ferment is, because sometimes we have the same varieties fermented separately, and we make the exact same blend as a blend as compared to the co-ferment, and they're totally different wines. It's really, really, really fascinating. But obviously, you have to be able to pick something at about the same time to do a co-ferment. Sure. So we can't do that with everything. And then we have a range of interesting single varieties that can change by the year. Tannat, Syrah, Mourvedre.
I'm looking at Tannat. That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, we make a Blanc Noir sparkling wine from Tannat, which is probably there's not a lot of those on the market, but we started to do that because Nate Waller, winemaker, he looked at the chemistry of that block and goes, that looks like sparkling wines. We said, well, there you go. And now it's been a sparkling wine ever since, because the acidity on that variety can be extremely high. In this one block, in this Grand, you get really, really low pHs. So it's ideal for sparkling. And
gotta say, never happened.
So it's a Pet Nat style. So it's it's fermented in the bottle naturally on its own, on the native yeast. It's a lot of work to do, but we're really happy with the results.
Now, I've sold wine for a long time, but how do you get the new consumer to be trying some of these? Is it just a general trend in beverages with new and all the kombuchas and all the ciders, where people are now more receptive to the orange wines and the Pet Nats?
I've been actually surprised how quickly the market has changed. I mean, orange wine now is almost a established category.
I couldn't believe it. I was in our local
wine list section.
I was in a local it was a pub, a Bottle Craft, and there's a fish taco place there, and it's down by the beach where I live, and there was about 5 picnic tables, and I was looking across the picnic tables on Sunday night, and every table had an orange wine on it. And I never thought I'd see that.
It's amazing that this transition. What's happened, I think, is there's been a lot of distributor consolidation over the years, and there's these giant companies, and it opened up an opportunity for a lot of smaller to medium-sized distributors to really commit to this style of wine, and their whole business model is working with organic, biodynamic, regenerative wines. And then surrounding them, there's been a significant growth in the customers that want those kind of wines. Where you've got these wine bars and these small independent wine shops, and that's really the kind of wines that they hang their hats on. So between these distributors and this network, and it's all over the country now. I mean, you go to I don't care what city you go to, Little Rock, anywhere. There's natural wine bars, through the whole country. So. We're a small winery, and we're currently in 17 states and 3 Canadian provinces, and that's about maximum velocity for us right now. So we just there's a market out there for authentic wines, and I don't mean just natural wines, but natural wines it's kind of a descriptor I'm not totally comfortable with, but I have to live with
it. To describe it, I mean, I was talking to my wife. We had a bottle ourselves that night, and she liked it because she described it's kind of this cross between the ciders you like to drink and the wines I like to drink.
Yeah. I
Well,
mean, our whole thing. Go ahead.
Oh no, keep going.
Our whole thing is that we don't like wine faults, even though we're a natural wine company. So we don't like Brett and VA and things like that in our wine. And the way you do that is as a natural wine producer, since there's not much you can do to the wine. So you have to have exceptionally healthy fruit, and you have to be just super clean in the wine. I mean, you have to have every detail done. You can't let anything go, and you just have to really, really stay on top of it. So, and Nate Wall has been, he's really taken the winemaking to a different level here, and I think that's why we're as successful as we are. Then we added. Go ahead.
Oh, nothing. I was just gonna ask you honestly, like, what advice then you would give to somebody that is wanting to go into this biodynamic farming, and because I truly believe that the biodynamic term is thrown around pretty loosely in the wine industry. I've heard, I do biodynamic farming, and I'm like, do they actually though, or do they not?
Right.
And so as somebody that studied this, you would just be perfect for like advice. And
everybody that farms biodynamically wants everybody else to farm biodynamically. If you want help, just talk to a biodynamic farmer, and they will go out of your way to help you become biodynamic too, because we're not doing, our little 100-acre farm here is not, the way we're farming is not going to change climate change. We need to have tens of thousands of acres, hundreds of thousands, millions of acres convert to this type of agriculture. And that's why I think certifications are important. Is it really sends the message out. So by us committing to getting the certification and putting that on the label, I think we communicate to consumers that there is something out there to look for. And if people see us have success, it's agriculture. You have to make a margin. You can't, just lose money on your farm. You have to actually do it. And I think this is one of the best ways to do that. But it's a lot of work up front. You'll get just tremendous help from the community, and because there's a commitment to the whole idea. It's not just simply. People say, "Oh, the biodynamic session, you're just doing that for the marketing." I said, "Talk to my accountant." They don't think I'm doing it for marketing.
For sure. On the but on the marketing in the natural wines, I mean, there's always that navigating the natural wine category. There is a lot of funk in it.
Yes,
and it's good to hear. So you're going on the clean side, and there's a lot of people that really love Brett. So it's kind of, you got to have a got to have an open mind in the natural wine category on what you're getting. It's similar to beers or ciders. You're going to get a lot of different variety in there. So you would describe yours, Troon, is more on the cleaner side.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We make the wines we love. I think that's the ultimate business decision for a small winery, is you really have to make what you love. Otherwise you don't have a real story, a real reason to exist. So we do this out of this is what we believe. This is what we really think is the right thing to do to make better wine. I mean, I originally made the transformation to biodynamics. My initial choice was that I felt it would make better wine. That was the number one thing. And the climate stuff is like bonus points. Let's go for it. Yeah. But I wanted to farm the way I thought would make better wine.
And that you're always on the pursuit of better wine. And I'm a big fan of your blog. And you just had a recent article come out, I think in July. I read it about watching the Eye of the Beholder, and the story about your experience with the optical sorter and what it did to the wine. Talk to us about that. I was fascinated by that article.
Well, it's an art concept. The beholder's share is that the artist makes a creation, but that's only 50% of the experience, and it's the beholder, the viewer, that supplies that other 50%. And I felt that applies to wine too. It's what we bring to what you as a consumer bring to the wine is what makes the total experience complete. So there's a lot of wines that are the same in the world, and there's this kind of baseline, this ultra ripe fruity style, and that's where the optical sorter comes in, I guess. So an optical sorter is for those who've never seen one. When I saw it for the first time, it's like, it's a miracle. You think it's like, look at that. It's I can't believe it, because out of one side comes these perfect little blueberries of grapes, and on the other side, everything else comes out, and you can just do it. And it just runs. That's much faster than humans and much more accurate than humans. But what I discovered is when you take out all the imperfections, you also take out a lot of the parts that make wine interesting. I think that a wine that's made with grapes of slightly different ripenesses, with different acids and different sugar levels, make a more interesting, more layered wine. And when the couple of years that I used the optical sorter, I felt it took like the soul out of the wine. You ended up with this. Sure, it was beautiful, it was clean, it was fruity, but it wasn't very interesting, and it didn't have any edges to it. There's nothing to grip onto and really identify it, other than this kind of bland, clean, deeply fruity wine.
Yeah, it's like the beauty lies in not the imperfections, but the differences and everything out of what that thing. And you just make some of the ideal stereotype, and you've got a very, like you said, lacks the soul.
Yeah, I'm not saying you put the moldy grapes in and everything too, but yes, but there's that it's just that if you take too much, you're taking things away eventually. And you just don't want to keep taking things away. And that's our whole winemaking philosophy. That's what we don't filter. That's where we don't find, because we feel that everything takes something away. Is a wine a little hazy sometimes? Occasionally, one of the orange wines and things like that but we feel we would lose more by taking that out than by just leaving it there. And instead of going for some squeaky clean, clear wine, just go for the flavor and the complexity.
No, that's and anybody that wants to see that, it's on craigcamp.com. Who's also you're also a very accomplished photographer. My background's also,
that's what I did. I actually did that for a job for a few years, and then I got into wine. So I've been a photographer for a minute. I haven't taken many lately, but back in the day, it's been a passion of mine. So I got to compliment you also on your photography. So thank you.
There's some great vineyard shots in there.
Well, we're lucky as an industry that we are in a very visual friendly environment most of the time. I'm surrounded by grapevines and beautiful mountains and sheep and things like that. So there's lots of things to take pictures of, and people like what we do. It's not like we're putting pictures of shoes up or something like that. People are really interested in seeing what's happening on a farm like ours, and we love to share it. And getting other people on board to farm this way is something we want to do. I would just encourage anybody that's going to do this is, talk to people and just realize it's going to take a while, and you can't do it all at once. You're saying, this year I'm going to accomplish these things, the next year I'm going to add this layer and that layer and that layer, and then 7-8 years later you've really got the whole system in place and working, and then you can really move forward.
Absolutely. Craig, as we're kind of wrapping down, I like to kind of ask, how do you stay motivated, and what advice do you give the winemaker, your vintage in, vintage out, staying motivated in this industry?
Yeah, I mean, it can be. I mean, certainly anybody that has to deal with the sales side can get very, very frustrated. The distribution is difficult, and you have to have a serious ability to absorb rejection and keep going. But you just, there's a feeling about doing something like this. I guess it just really gets into you. It elevates your spirit, so that you can go out and do that day after day and feel like you're really doing something, not for the planet, for making something that people would enjoy, but also, just rejuvenating yourself. Working on a farm in an agricultural area is a very rejuvenating experience. So we're lucky that we have that to recharge our batteries all the time. And then, every year you get the vintage, and it's so exciting to see what you're going to do this year, because we never know quite for sure what's going to come out of it. The grapes kind of tell us where they want to go. So, it's an adventure. It's an adventure every year.
Oh, that's fantastic. So, Craig, where can people find out more about you, Troon Vineyards, and the work you're doing?
So we're troonvineyard.com, and you mentioned craigcamp.com, where I write, and I'm on social at Craig Camp, and we are at Troon Wines social, and we have a very active social media presence. So if you like to see pictures of baby lambs and grapes and things like that, just tune into the Troon feed. Awesome.
Well, Craig, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Definitely got to have you
come visit us.
Will do. Will do. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Legends Behind the Craft podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.